Hey, and welcome once again. It's the monthly webinar that we produce every month for the membership of the National Chimney Sweep Guild. And you're getting this webinar. This is the November 2017 edition. And soon right now, I hope you got time to listen to me for a few minutes. But the whole thing is, I'm doing this smack dab, and you're getting it in the busiest, most hectic time of the year. So hopefully you're taking your notes and you're seeing what's happening and you're looking and visualizing what changes you're going to make for next year. But that's kind of where the title of this month's webinar goes to, because there's a big buzzword out there and it's been out in the speaking industry and the coaching industry, and there's books being written, and that buzzword is called reinvention. Reinvention is a hot topic. In fact, I wrote a book, Chaos Reinvention, a couple years ago, and that is really reinvention is something that I've done a lot of studying of, and I've been to a lot of classes on. And recently, one of the leading experts on reinvention in the United States is a guy by the name of Damian Mason. Now, I met Damian by attending a conference in 2016, listened to Damian, and he had some real great insights. So I asked him to appear on my podcast the other week, and I wanted to expand on what he talked about there because Damian, he's truly a master of reinvention. In fact, Damian, he had to reinvent himself. And the reason being, Damian was a comic and a comedian, and he specialized in being a Bill Clinton impersonator. But the problem was, when Bill Clinton wasn't president any longer, the demand for Bill Clinton impersonators kind of dropped. So Damien had to refocus, had to regain his clarity, had to kind of figure out what he would go through. And see, that's kind of where we're at in business. And one of the things that's going on in business is we have to continuously reinvent ourselves. If we look at the automobile industry, look how it reinvents itself just about every year with new models coming out. Oh, and it's really what we ought to look at. You see, reinvention comes in because when we're raised, when we're children, when we go through schools, we actually go through a period in life that forms lifetime opinions in us. And in many educators' thoughts, and they've shared this with me, they've said that by the fifth grade, a person's course in life is pretty well set. And after the fifth grade level, it gets a little tougher to change. And if you look back on your own history, think a minute for how you've reinvented yourself over the years. See, we leave childhood and we enter into adulthood. And as we go through adulthood, we face a lot of challenges. We have families, we have marriages. Sometimes we have failed marriages. Sometimes we lose people that are close to us in our life. We may lose our parents or others that are very, very near and dear to our hearts. And it makes us stand back and say, hey, what's it all about? Where are we going? Well, see, that's what you've got to do as a business owner. You've got to be able to redefine what your purpose is and where you're going in life. Last month, I did a webinar. It was a 1 hour presentation, and it's something that so many of us in this industry do, which is lining chimneys. And the title of it was A Documentary of Chimney Relining and Why We Reline Chimneys. But as I went through this program and as I was putting it together, I was able to reflect back on because I was involved in this industry when relining was in its infancy. In fact, nobody was really doing it at one time. So, what occurred is from the early 80s through the mid 80s and into the day that chimney relining went from being an oddity to an everyday occurrence. And as you go through this, you look, and there's been so many changes in the way we line chimneys, the methods we use to line chimneys, the tooling that's been developed, the way that flue tiles are removed, flue linings are removed, the way we've developed sizing programs. And if we look at relining has actually been reinvented many, many times. If you're relining chimneys, you're probably using a flexible chimney pipe. At one time, it was all rigid pipe. In fact, there was a time there was no flexible pipe. I was in this industry at that time. But due to the thought processes, the communication, the sharing of ideas, we've been able to redefine the skill of realigning and make it a much easier way to do things. We've got new tooling, new methods, new processes that have greatly changed it. And went as far as we now have systems developed that coat the interiors of flue. And when we look at this, it's been a really big process. And as I look at this industry, we've reinvented the way we look at smoke chambers. We've reinvented the way we look at water entry problems. And basically, as we look at this, we have reinvented so many of the systems and the processes that we use on a daily basis. It's really phenomenal when we see how far we go. But I want you to stop for a minute. What if you had been the person that was responsible for Sears Roebuck? What if 10 to 20 years ago that you had had the foresight, like some guys did, that started selling books out of a garage and started developing a different business model? Those guys now have a company called Amazon that has now soared to the top of the retail world. They are the leaders because they reinvented the whole process of retail. If you remember what the .coms were like and when we first came out and things started hitting the internet, what's happening is the internet has become the shopping mall of the world today. And if you look even further, what if Ford had been able to look through the windshield and saw what Toyota saw and enabled Toyota to go to the top of the car manufacturing world and practically debilitated car manufacturing in the United States, which is now coming back to life. But this reflects something because Henry Ford, one of the smartest business owners, one of the smartest businessmen that ever lived in the 20th century, he and Steve Jobs, what if Henry Ford had been able to look ahead and see what was happening? And Henry Ford said something. One of the sayings that Henry Ford had was, if I had asked the customer what they wanted when I was developing the assembly line, they would have simply said, hey, I just need a faster horse. So what Henry did was Henry saw that the common man needed a method of transportation that could do better than the horse could do, than the horse and wagon. So Henry didn't invent the automobile, but what Henry Ford invented was the assembly line production and where car manufacturing was then put in the reach of the common man. As we look at it, isn't that a lot of what Amazon's doing today? They're putting products in reach of everyone. And we look at it and all the different companies that are doing this, the Zappos and all the others. And as you look at the car buying, manufacturing, and the car production process, one of the biggest changes that occurred over the last 20 to 30 years was what was called the Toyota production system, and where they invented the push-pull inventory and able to have the parts there right when they were needed without excess inventory. And when the Toyota experts were questioned, where did you find this great idea? They said, hey, we read Henry Ford's book. But see, during the process, Ford Motor Company didn't reinvent itself. And all of a sudden, from somewhere else, someone came along and took their market. And then Ford and Chrysler and Chevrolet, what they had to do is, General Motors, they had to come back and regain their market shares. Now, as you look through the history of American business, there's all kinds of examples of this. And people who have reinvented themselves because of a changing demand or a changing outlook of the customer. One of these is a company that Colonel Sanders started, and I love Colonel Sanders. The story of Colonel Sanders is really amazing. Colonel Sanders, he came out with what was called Kentucky Fried Chicken. And the Colonel's success story is he went around the country selling his recipe, his finger-licking good recipe, and he sold it to restaurants where he made 2 cents a piece of chicken, 2 cents. Okay. He did all of these kind of things. But later on, the American public got concerned about cholesterol, fatty foods. Kentucky fried chicken, that denoted that there was fried foods, and fried foods were now frowned upon. So did Kentucky Fried Chicken stop making chicken? No, they refocused and they started branding under the name KFC. And see, this has happened in so many different businesses. They have refocused. Another one is Kim Long. Kim Long, hey, nobody wants to talk about chemicals. So Kim Long changed its name, changed its brand, and became True Green. Another company that changed its business model was a railroad company that became Sprint. All these things have been happening over the course of our lifetime and the course of business in the free enterprise system in America. And so that's what all of us have to do. How do we reinvent ourselves? How do we reinvent our businesses for the needs of the change that the consumer has and requirements for us? That's the important thing. Okay. Now, when I talked to Damien, one of the things that Damien talked about, Damien had a background in agriculture. He was just a good old boy from Indiana, grew up on the farm, and in fact still has a farm in Indiana, still does speaking, but he's still a farmer. And we started talking about the terms that different people had used and the way business has changed. And one of them is the food industry. Have you noticed that the food industry has changed so many terms? Gluten free. How often do you see gluten free on the menu? And when you look at it, what has restaurants started doing? They've changed the terms to bring you in. They've identified a new process, a new way of saying it. One of the big taglines in the restaurant business now is farm to table. Farm to table. Okay. And these are the bywords that the customer buys. These are the bywords that drive the customer to walk into the restaurant. It's farm to table. Good words. And as you go, you got to look back at these experts in business that reinvented their businesses and totally changed the world we live in. One of these guys is a guy by the name of Steve Jobs, who's no longer with us. Steve Jobs was at Apple Computers. But the biggest thing that Steve Jobs is known for is the way that he transformed telecommunications in this world with his iPhone. And as you look at this, I want you to think back. You may be listening to this to your own personal device. It was less than 20 years ago that Steve Jobs walked onto a stage, walked up to a computer, and picked the computer up and walked around the stage while he was watching a live stream video, a live stream presentation without the use of a wire. Steve Jobs didn't invent wireless internet. What Steve Jobs did was brought wireless internet to the masses. It was a change in the thoughts. When you look at it, Steve Jobs looked ahead and he could visualize. One of the things that Steve Jobs did as it went through this was that Steve Jobs also realized the following. When Steve Jobs came out with the iPhone, he didn't want to own the market. He didn't want everybody, that was not his goal. The goal of Apple computers with the iPhone was to get 1% of the telephone business, 1% of the devices. But as you look at it, what percentage of you listening to this today have an iPhone? iPhones recently, they came out with an iPhone 10, a telephone at $1,000, a telephone that people stood in line to buy that phone on the initial day. Now, does this phone have great features? I'm sure it does. But let's get real. It's a telephone. It's $1,000 telephone. And at the same time this $1,000 phone is there, you can get much lower cost phones at Walmart, other places. To have a wireless device, you don't have to spend $1,000 for it. That's the way it is. So this is the question for you. What's your new tagline? The one that's going to be like the food industry is popularized, as in farm to table, or the term gluten free. What's the taglines you're coming up with that's going to say, hey, we're chimney sweeps. We save energy. What's the tagline that you're going to conceive that's going to say, hey, we're chimney sweeps and we're going to help conserve the natural resources of this country? Hey, we're a chimney service company and we cause less pollution to be emitted into the atmosphere. We're the chimney service industry of America. We work to provide cleaner air in your homes. You see, these are all the things, these are all the taglines that are going to cause the reinvention to occur. Because one thing's for sure, if you don't reinvent yourself and reinvent your business, you can bet someone's going to come out and do it a better way. So you may be busy as heck right now, but the question is, how busy will you be in February? How busy will you be in March? This is a hectic time of the year. It's what we traditionally call a busy season. I hate to be the busy season. Here's the thing, and I got to tell you, none of us know, any of us, exactly how we're going to operate business in 3 years. This world is changing that fast. Technology, it's bringing out something new continuously. When you look at technology, we're able to broadcast our own television station. We're able to see thousands of movies being run into our homes. Now we can have a device in our home that we walk in and say, hey, Alexis, lights on. Alexis, do this. Alexis, what's the weather tomorrow? This is what we call artificial intelligence. And the amount of artificial intelligence that's growing is phenomenal. How are you? You see, you have to reinvent. You have to. The real victors in the reinvention game are those who are thinking ahead, not how to do business today, but how they're going to do business next year, in 3 years. You got to have this vision. It goes down to the classic advice of Michael Gerber in the E-Myth Revisit, all the processes that E-Myth talked about. And what it was, you got to stop. You can't just work in your business day in, day out from now on. You've got to stop, work on the business, conceive the strategies that you're going to do to make it all work. You got to decide for yourself. In 3 years, do you want to be the guy that everybody looks at and say, hey, just how in the world did he think and put that together? How did it happen? That can be your choice. You can be that guy. You can be that gal. You can be that person. Because here's what you don't want to be able to say, hey, you know, that ship sailed. And for some reason, I wasn't on it and I missed it. Because at that point, you're going to be behind the gun. So my parting words to you this month are as follows. I'm hoping that you are going to be one of the people that's going to be guiding a ship. That as this ship is gathering wind and heading into the waves and going and exploring new locations, you're going to be on that ship. And you're going to be one of the leaders that's going to guide this industry into the future, into where it has the potential to be. Come up with the wisdom that you know you have deep inside. Come up with the thought processes. Stop concerning yourself with how bad it is today, maybe, and instead focus in. Focus where you can go in the future. Where can you take your business? Where can you go that you're going to be seen as a person who had the foresight to have that ship that sailed into the sunset, into the horizon? That was you. You guided that ship. And with that, my name's Jerry Eisenhower. I want to thank you for listening to me today. I'm hopeful that these words will help you in your quest for where you want to go. What we want to see you do is take your business dreams and turn them into your business realities. Each and every month, I'm offered this opportunity to present my message to you, and I want to share with you. It's one of the highest honors and privileges that I have in life is I'm able to share my ideas, my thoughts, my concepts with the greatest people I know who are the members of the chimney and venting industry of America. Have a great Thanksgiving. Have a great Christmas. And hey, it's not going to be long. Get your ship ready and let's sail into the future and make it happen. Get your message ready. It's up to you. Have a great week. Talk to you next time.